On the morning of April 9th, Lakewood Elementary School was transformed from a house of learning into a house of burning. In the immediate aftermath of the fire, several rumors circulated over what had caused the tragedy to unfold. Authorities were quick to identify faulty wiring as the source of the fire, but in their haste, they never stopped to consider what the target of the fire might have been, be it a bad report card or possibly an embarrassing photograph. A school-wide fire would provide anyone the perfect opportunity to hide their skeletons among the rubble. In uncovering Alan and Buster's story, it's become clear that they were not the only suspects in Mr. Ratburn's class who were trying to keep their dirty little secrets buried, or in the case of Sue Ellen's journal, burnt to a crisp. Who exactly is Sue Ellen Armstrong, aka Suspect A, and why was she so desperate to protect the contents of her journal? Is it possible the identity of the culprit was hidden among the pages of her diary? Newly recovered remains from Sue Ellen's waterlogged logbook may finally reveal the target of the fire and bring us one step closer to discovering the true identity of the April 9th arsonist. This video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. Make sure to subscribe and help get this video to 5,000 likes. Unlike most of the students in Mr. Ratburn's class, Sue Ellen Armstrong was a relative newcomer to Lakewood Elementary. Her family's arrival in the winter of 2001 was such a shock to Elwood that it even made the local paper. As the daughter of a U.S. diplomat, Sue Ellen had spent most of her formative years traveling abroad. While most of the town was welcoming to the Armstrongs, some locals were perplexed by their sudden appearance. Why was a U.S. diplomat that was previously stationed in Nigeria and San Jose suddenly transferred to the middle of Bumlick, Pennsylvania? What logical explanation could there be for the Armstrong family's extensive country hopping, unless they were running from something? Sue Ellen claims she never set foot in America before joining Mr. Ratburn's 3rd grade class, but if that's the case, then how does she explain the security footage from Arthur's 2nd grade year, where she's clearly shown playing basketball with the other students? And why was she spotted floating around Camp Horsewater several months before her family moved to town? Sue Ellen is not the only member of her family with a seemingly paradoxical past. Though Mr. Armstrong boasts a deep knowledge of all things multicultural, nobody in Elwood knows what his actual job is. When asked point-blank about his role as a diplomat at parent-teacher night, Mr. Armstrong's response did little to clarify things.
You're a diplomat. I bet you've been to all sorts of interesting places.
Not really, just here and there.
Uh-huh.
At the time of the family's arrival, residential conspiracy theorist and future hoarder star Buster Baxter hypothesized that the Armstrongs were illegal aliens sent to the United States to spy on its citizens. However, Sue Ellen quickly made a mark among her peers and gained a reputation as a martial arts badass who doesn't eat meat or take shit from big bad bullies. Not only can she rock a mean alto sax, but she can apparently levitate in mid-air. Could her extensive skill set also include serial arson? When looking into Sue Ellen's Lakewood student application, our team discovered that none of her former addresses listed on her file currently exist. Could it be the frizzy-haired fire freak had a history of burning down homes as the Armstrong family fled from country to country in a desperate attempt to cover their tracks? The only person who could possibly expose Sue Ellen's international crime spree was herself. Friends close to Sue Ellen noted how protective she was of her diary, to the point that she had the word private written on the cover in 7 different languages. Nerd. In fact, just 2 weeks before the fire, the Taekwondo prodigy nearly delivered a flying punch to the public library after her journal was accidentally filed away with the other books. Several of Sue Ellen's peers recalled her frantic efforts to recover the book before anyone could discover what was inside. Why was she so hellbent on keeping her journal away from prying eyes? Is it possible Sue Ellen's diary contained a detailed record of her previous arsons, or maybe even plans surrounding her next target? Though none of her friends claimed they looked inside the journal, Sue Ellen was not keen to risk another close call, and knew she needed to destroy the only evidence of her life of crime once and for all. But even if she was committed to putting her sordid past behind her, what was to stop Sue Ellen from going out with a bang? Security camera footage from the morning of April 9th shows that once the fire alarms went off, Sue Ellen had more than enough time to grab her backpack before being led outside. Yet she purposely chose to leave it behind to be destroyed along with the rest of her classroom. With her damning documentation destroyed, Sue Ellen could finally breathe easy knowing there was nothing left to connect her to the fire. Or so she thought. For the past 23 years, it was assumed that the contents of Sue Ellen's diary had been lost with the fire. However, newly uncovered remains from Armstrong's tattered tell-all reveals a whole new side of Sue Ellen that nobody could have predicted. When examining the contents of Sue Ellen's private thoughts, her storied past starts to show some glaring holes. Of the 7 languages written on the cover of her diary, it seems odd that a Taekwondo expert would fail to include a Korean inscription. The plot thickens when you go beyond the cover and actually look inside the book. Most of the recovered pages detail an ongoing crush with an individual only identified as AR. And while it's unknown why Sue Ellen was in love with the state of Arkansas, the final page in her diary will leave you shouting Eureka. Her last recorded entry includes a photo strip of Sue Ellen with fellow third grader and designated quiet kid Fern Walters. While the photo itself is extraneous, it tells a whole other story when you look at the date marked on the passage. How could Sue Ellen have taken a photograph a week after the fire that destroyed her journal? The April 16th entry, along with her seemingly random appearances around town, suggests only one logical explanation: that Sue Ellen's family history was just an elaborate cover-up to conceal her true identity, not as an arsonist, but a time traveler. Could Sue Ellen secretly be a Peggy Sue? When examined through this new perspective, it suddenly makes sense that none of Sue Ellen's former homes are currently standing, because they never existed in the first place. Further recovered pages show a pattern of Sue Ellen marking her entries not by date, but rather a numeric sequence. With over 160 confirmed entries, why would someone numerically catalog their diary? Unless it wasn't just a personal diary, but rather a mission log. By traveling back several months before April 9th, Sue Ellen would have had more than enough time to get the lay of the school by posing as a new student so she could put her plan into action. But what could Sue Ellen possibly stand to gain from turning Lakewood into kindling? Surely burning down a school in the past would have dire ripple effects throughout the space-time continuum. Lord knows what happens to the poor bastards who piss off the space police. What if her plan wasn't to start the fire, but rather prevent it from happening in the first place? Perhaps Sue Ellen intended to befriend the future fire starter and snuff out the flames before they even sparked. Maybe the diary entry and Sue Ellen's unexplained appearances all over Elwood are evidence of her previous failed attempts to stop the April 9th arsonist. But if she was sent back in time to prevent the fire, then who would have been Sue Ellen's prime suspect? When her diary went missing, one person was all too eager to help her find it. Muffy Crosswire seemed just as keen to recover Sue Ellen's diary before anyone else could read it. Is it possible the buck-toothed trust fund baby knew that Sue Ellen was onto her scheme? And if so, what lengths would Muffy have gone to keep the truth from getting out? What do we actually know about Muffy Crosswire, aka Suspect C? Muffy is the only daughter of business mogul and heir to the Crosswire Motors franchise, Edward E. Crosswire, who claims to be the richest man in Elwood City, yet somehow can't afford to send his kids to private school. Just like Sue Ellen, Muffy started her time at Lakewood as a mid-semester transfer student. After joining Mr. Marco's second grade class, Muffy quickly established herself as the most popular girl in school, due in no small part to her daddy's money. While Muffy and Sue Ellen were sociable during school hours, their interactions off-campus proved to be a different story. Earlier in the semester, several students were shocked to learn that the Sugar Bowl would be shutting its doors for good. The iconic soda shop that had been a fixture of Elwood City for over half a century would soon be torn down to make room for a brand new Chicken Lickin' franchise. As a devout vegetarian and staunch supporter of small businesses, Sue Ellen rallied her friends to protest the proposed poultry poaching. While most of her peers were largely apathetic towards Sue Ellen's war against the Chicken Man, Muffy was the one student actively in favor of emptying out the Sugar Bowl. Listen to this recovered audio from a confrontation between Sue Ellen and Muffy, where the latter seems to threaten to expose the former's secret.
You know, Sue Ellen, it's really a pity we don't hang out more. I've admired you since we were little kids.
How could they have known each other when they were little? It's not like either of them were at Lakewood prior to the second grade, unless they were. As it turns out, the brain was not the only one with a dark secret connected to his kindergarten class photo. The same photograph that exposed Alan Powers as a kindergarten flunky also exposed a hidden truth buried under a mountain of unruly hair. How is it that Muffy Crosswire was photographed with her friends despite not meeting them until second grade? Could it be the Crosswires are also a secret family of time travelers? This would account for Muffy's unexplained appearance in the photo, until you remember the Crosswire family had strong ties to the Elwood community. When Ed Crosswire attempted to ban the Scare Your Pants Off Club books from the public library, he was quickly called out by the book's author, who just so happened to be his grade school English teacher from the mid-70s.
You never did read, Ed.
Further research reveals the Crosswire family had been a leading force in the automotive industry since the early 1920s. So if Muffy is not a time traveler, then why does she appear in a class photo that predates her Lakewood debut by nearly 3 years? And why don't any of her friends remember her being in their kindergarten class? That's because Muffy wasn't in kindergarten long enough to make a lasting impression. Mrs. Robertson's teaching notes reveal Muffy was only enrolled in her class for 2 weeks before being transferred to a different school. Muffy's student records reveal the derelict debutante had spent the last 3 years bouncing around various public schools before ending up at Lakewood Elementary.
Because at my old school,
You're not at your old school, smarty pants. You're at plain old Lakewood Elementary.
Nobody knows for sure what happened to Muffy at her old schools or why she left so suddenly, but we do know what happened to the schools after she left. A timeline of Muffy's transfer shows how each school she attended shut down within 6 months after her enrollment. Not only that, but each shuttered school was quickly replaced by an ever-expanding fast food chain. While you might think a multitude of fast food chains would rush to capitalize on the school's foreclosures, it turns out one chain was monopolizing the market.
you don't
really think we need another chicken lickin'.
Of course not. What we need is a burrito barn. That's the franchise Daddy wants to put there.
Burrito Barn. Why would Mr. Crosswire be so keen to have this particular restaurant open in his neighborhood? Unless he had something to gain from it. As it turns out, in addition to running a used car lot, Mr. Crosswire also has a controlling interest in the Burrito Barn fast food chain. When you look back at all the old schools Muffy attended, you'll see that each one was replaced with a Burrito Barn at the time of their foreclosures. In the 3 years prior to the fire, the Crosswire clan had made a small fortune by buying up notoriously underfunded public schools and flipping them into lucrative extensions of their rapidly growing Burrito Barn empire, and the Sugar Bowl was their next target. However, their burrito plans would burst at the seams when Sugar Bowl owner Carl Menino backed out of the deal at the last minute. With the ice cream parlor no longer a viable option, the Crosswires next set their sights on Lakewood Elementary. This was not the first time the Crosswires had attempted to profit off the perky public school. Earlier that fall, Muffy had run for class president with a campaign promise to change the playground into a theme park and implement gourmet food into the cafeteria. For decades, parents and educators have faced an uphill battle to keep unhealthy foods out of school lunches. As third grade class president, Muffy would have undoubtedly had the authority to bypass the school board and directly implement a Burrito Barn chain into the school cafeteria. Fortunately, Muffy's campaign was defeated by a dark horse candidate whose public appeal is broader than his waistline, but that didn't stop her from pursuing her goal as she swore vengeance against Arthur Reed, whom she blamed for her election defeat.
I'm mad at you, Arthur, and I won't forget this. Ever!
If Muffy couldn't get her Burrito Barn the diplomatic way, she would have to resort to more drastic actions. And what better way to secure her father's franchise and get revenge on her nemesis than by frying two birds in the same fire? On the morning of April 9th, Arthur's father was called in to cater for a special breakfast at Lakewood Elementary. Muffy knew that once Mr. Reed was inside the building, starting a fire would allow her father to buy up the school's land rights while simultaneously getting revenge against the blood of her sworn enemy. But what Muffy didn't know was that Sue Ellen had been onto her scheme for months, and had plans in place to suppress the fire before it even began. After the incident at the public library, Sue Ellen knew Muffy had to be the one who was going to start the fire, and had to act quickly before the amoral arsonist caught on to her true identity. If Mr. Reed truly was the target of the April 9th fire, then Sue Ellen's mission should have prevented the blaze from ever breaking out. But seeing how history played out, we know someone must have royally goofed the pooch. Perhaps Sue Ellen miscalculated when and where Muffy planned to start the fire. All she knew was that the fire was meant to start around the same time as the catered breakfast, but if Sue Ellen had dug just a little deeper, she would have discovered why the breakfast was so important in the first place. It turns out the special breakfast was actually a ploy by Mr. Crosswire himself to make a sales pitch directly to the school board. By inviting them to the school cafeteria for a privately catered breakfast, Mr. Crosswire had the perfect opportunity to present his business plan for adding a Burrito Barn franchise to the school cafeteria. After several years of forcing schools to shutter their doors, Mr. Crosswire realized there was an easier way to get his burritos into the hands of consumers. By incorporating the fast food chain directly into the cafeteria, the Crosswires could keep their hands clean of any arrestable offense while simultaneously turning the students of Lakewood into lifelong loyal customers. However, the presentation was cut short when the fire broke out in the teacher's lounge, forcing everyone to evacuate the cafeteria. There's no reason Muffy or her father would have started the fire if it meant sabotaging their own pitch to the school board, which means Muffy Crosswire couldn't have been the April 9th arsonist, and Sue Ellen's months of careful planning had all been for naught. By the time Sue Ellen realized her mistake, it was already too late to correct course. As she was forced to evacuate the building, the sole record of her painstaking investigation was destroyed by the very thing she was meant to prevent. Though Sue Ellen may have had the wrong culprit, the one good thing to come out of the fire was a surprising ember of friendship. As Sue Ellen mourned the loss of her journal, it was actually Muffy of all people whom she found solace in. By offering her a new journal as a peace offering, the two girls' friendship was born out of the ashes of the April 9th tragedy. Although Mr. Reed was not the target of the fire, he nearly got his souffle scorched by the time he made it out of the blazing inferno. But that still begs the question, why was Mr. Reed one of the last people to make it out of the school? Surely he would have been evacuated with everyone else at the breakfast presentation, unless he wasn't in the cafeteria when the fire began. Where exactly was Mr. Reed when the fire broke out in the teacher's lounge? Who was he meeting with, and why did it take him so long to evacuate the building? Find out on the next episode of the April 9th Arsonist. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know in the comments which cartoon brat you want me to tear into next. If there's a specific episode you want me to cover, consider becoming one of my top-tier patrons to commission a review for my channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.
And I say, hey, what a wonderful kind of day. If you can learn to work and play, and get along with each other.